joining us today. My name is Wesley Boudreaux, one of the financial advisors here at the Retirement Group. Today we're going to talk about 72T, or substantial and equal periodic payments, and what that means for a lot of retirees that may be leaving early or needing to supplement their income prior to age 59 and a half. Before I jump into that, just a quick reminder for this webinar: if you've got any questions, feel free to use the Q&A box on your screen. Your information is anonymous, so we will not see your name, so go ahead and put any questions you have. I'll try to get to as many as I can at the end of the webinar. If for some reason we don't get to yours, we'll try and follow up with you on that as well. There is also a chat box. Periodically we'll put some information in there, so be sure to follow along there as well. Different items like how to reach us, how to schedule an appointment with myself or one of the other advisors, where to find the upcoming webinar information. There might be how to follow us on LinkedIn, or also there may be a survey in there asking us how this webinar went, or any suggested topics you want us to add in the future as well. And a quick reminder, even though we've been doing this for over 30 years, working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies helping employees retire, that does not mean we are employed by your specific company or endorsed by them. But rest assured, if you have questions, give us a call. We can dig into your company's specific plans beyond the 72T. We do a lot of work with companies where we've got a deep understanding of their benefits plans inside and out. So, who the Retirement Group is. Again, we are an independent financial advisory firm that focuses on working with corporate employees and helping them transition into retirement. I mentioned before, we've been doing this for about 30 years, and a lot of the different companies we've been working with for that entire time. So a lot of our advisors have a very deep understanding of your benefits plans, whether it be the pension plan, the 401k, healthcare, retiree medical, life insurance, all those different items. If you have any questions on it, we can definitely dig into that for you. And we've got offices throughout the country, so rest assured, if you need to sit down with somebody face to face, we can probably still accommodate that. But obviously, this day and age, one of the easier options is going to be web meetings, email, phone call, whatever your preferred communication is. Just let us know. And then at the end of the day, if there's anything you take us up on, it's our complimentary cash flow analysis. This is not just a cash flow analysis. This is a detailed financial plan specific to your situation and your company. So I mentioned before, pension decisions, 401k decisions, things like that. We can run through the entire scenario, let you know, are you on the right track to meet your retirement goals, whether it's retiring at a specific date, whether it's amassing a certain amount to live off of. So we can go through there and show you, is it best to take a pension as a lump sum or an annuity, for instance? Should you hang on for another quarter or another year because interest rates are changing? How does retiring now versus later affect your 401k? We go through all those different scenarios, and we can also look at 2 or 3 scenarios at the same time to show you how things play out, not just now, for the next 10, 20, 30 years, so you have a great idea financially when you're ready to retire. And then obviously we can help you out on the emotional decisions as well, but that's a completely different situation for most people. So today we're going to talk about, again, is the substantial and equal periodic payments, which is the IRS code 72T, and how you can get around the 10% penalty for early withdrawals. So generally speaking, across the board, if you take a withdrawal prior to age 59 and a half from a 401k or an IRA or 403b, any tax-deferred vehicle, you are potentially subject to a 10% penalty on top of the taxes that you would be paying anyway. Now, there are some different ways around that, and the one we'll talk about today, like I said, is the 72T. Another one we do with a lot of our clients, especially if they're leaving a company the year they turn 55 or later, is the age 55 rule. This is specific to 401ks, and as fiduciaries, we're gonna be adamant about telling you, if you're retiring in that realm, to keep something over there, because it would be a good safety net just in case. The difference there is you can take withdrawals from the 401k without the 10% penalty. You're still having a 20% withholding, and you're still paying taxes. Whereas if an advisor told you, hey, roll everything over to us, and let's say you're 57 years old, and you need to take a withdrawal, and it's under 59 and a half, you can be penalized unless you set that 72T. There's some other options for medical expenses, first-time home purchase, things like that. The Secure Act 2.0 just came out at the end of 2022, added a couple more, like natural disaster situations or victims of domestic abuse, things like that. There are some other one-off items that you could look at tapping into your 401k or IRA without the 10% penalty, but they are limited. So if you have any questions on there, just let us know. We'll get into that with you as well. And then ultimately, there's kind of a breather room, if you would. Before 59 and a half, if you take a withdrawal, there's potentially that 10% penalty. After, there's no penalty, so you can take withdrawals however you want. However, if we fast forward to age 72 or 73, they just changed that with the Secure Act 2.0 as well. Starting 73 this year is the RMD for some of you. So you don't have to take a withdrawal until 73. And then they're actually pushing that back to 75 after 2030 as well. I think 2033 is when that's supposed to go into effect. So you do have a maybe 13-year period or so, or maybe longer, that you have flexibility with your withdrawals and not having to worry about taking those out. So that gets into a lot of tax planning strategies here at the Retirement Group that we work with you on, as far as to try and minimize your taxes for yourself and your legacy or your beneficiaries down the road as well. So what is 72T, or again, substantial equal periodic payments? So essentially what it means is, if you want to take money out of your IRA and not have to pay that 10% penalty, you have to make a deal with the IRS and look at their specific calculation method to figure out how much can you take out on a periodic basis. And that periodic basis has to satisfy one of two criteria. It has to be until you reach age 59 and a half, or 5 years, whichever is longer. So let's say if you were to start a 72T at 57, you have to go till 62 and stick to that plan. If you start at 53, then you're looking at, 6.5 years, having to go until 59 and a half. If you do not honor that and you make a mistake, or you take an excess withdrawal, or forget to take withdrawal 1 year, the IRS can come back and penalize you that 10% penalty in arrears on everything you've taken out. So let's say, for instance, you set up a 72T and it was going to be $20,000 a year coming out, and you took it out for 4 years, so that's what, $80,000 you've taken out, and for some reason you forgot the last year, or something happened, then what's going to happen is the IRS is going to come back and tell you, hey, you owe us $8,000 penalty on that $80,000 you took out, because you didn't hold up your end of the deal. You didn't honor the full 72T calculation and go for the full 5 years in this case. So let's take a look at an example and kind of get into some different examples we see from time to time on how to utilize that within an actual plan, and how to budget if different items arise, the need to either stop or start or take other funds. So in this case, this is actually an example we've used for a while, and it actually becomes a little bit more appropriate right now. But let's take a look at Cynthia in this case. She's 52 years old. Between all of her accounts, her tax-deferred accounts like her pension, 401k, IRAs, she's got about $800,000. She's actually decided to retire early at 52. She may go back and do some part-time work, or maybe her husband's still working or something like that. But at the same time, she wants to tap into that $800,000. If she just said, hey, I want to take out a withdrawal, she's going to be paying taxes plus that 10% penalty. And as I mentioned before, she's not 55 yet, so she doesn't qualify for the age 55 rule in her specific 401k plan. So what she decides to do is take her funds, roll them all over into an IRA, and set up a 72T to figure out how much can she get out of that on a monthly or on an annual basis. What I mentioned before, as far as this being an older calculation, it's a little bit more prevalent now, is there's a lot of information down there at the bottom. I'm not going to go through all of that, but what happens is you have to go based upon the IRS codes and the IRS interest rates they provide for you to run that calculation. And in this case, whenever we ran this was back, I think probably 5, 6, 7 years ago, it came out to close to that $42,483 a year is what she is required to take out for that next 7.5 years. She's 52. So for that next 7.5 years, she's got to take out that same amount. If she takes any more or less from that account, then it could jeopardize that, and she could come back and have to pay that 10% penalty retroactively. Now, if we had this conversation about a year or two ago when interest rates were so much lower after the pandemic, she couldn't have gotten that full 42. She might have only been able to get something like 35 or something close to that, because interest rates were lower. However, last year in 2022, the IRS kind of, or the Fed kind of made it a little bit easier, and they came out with a flat 5% rate you can use. So you can go lower or higher, but you have to look at longevity tables, and there's a full calculation to go through there. And if you have questions on it, we can run it for you. But in her case right now, she could probably get closer to about $50,000 off that $800 if she wanted to. So if she only needed $42,000, she might not need to use that full $800,000. She might only need to use $700,000 of it or so, and keep that other $100,000 easier or accessible for emergency expenses or things like that. So let's look at the numbers here. So in this case, she's able to get $42,483 in that first line. However, if she wanted to net the same amount of income that she was getting off of that and not have the 72T, she'd have to take out about $50,200 in order to net the same amount. So after 7.5 years, her IRA value and the assumption of growth here would be a little bit over $1 million, versus if she hadn't taken the 72T, about $950,000. Her total taxes on the 72T would would be about 118,000 versus 173,000. So you can see a little bit over $50,000 savings in that case. And if we fast forward, 15 years, assuming growth, you can see that there's a difference stretches out more to over $100,000 difference by taking that 72T versus just taking distributions as she needs it to fund that $42,000 of income need that she has. So let's talk about some different options as far as what does it mean if you start that 72T and if you have to make some changes or adjustments to it, or could you? So look at some different scenarios as far as stopping and starting. What happens? I mentioned before in the case before that if you stop, you are going to be retroactively penalized. We'll talk about that. Whether you need to take out more money and supplement it, whether you want to use a 72T, or maybe you want to take just a one-time withdrawal, or maybe you want to take that age 55 rule. We'll go through all those different scenarios and show you how those kind of play out hypothetically. But at the end of the day, the best way to look at this is going to be on a one-on-one basis, because every calculation is based upon the amount of assets you have in the IRA, and then also based upon your age and longevity tables. So first example here, let's assume somebody wants to stop, takes out the 72T and decides to stop it. So in this case, it's not too big or too big of a penalty, but in this case, let's say somebody's got $400,000. I mentioned before in Cynthia's case, you don't have to take a 72T on your entire portfolio. You can split those accounts into two different IRAs, set one up for a 72T, and the other one can continue to grow and be there if you need to tap into it for something later. So in this case, this individual took that $400,000, separated into 250 and 150, and they took a 72T on that 250, and that gave them $15,000 a year for the next 5 years, or until 59 and a half, again, whichever's longer. So this individual looks like they took that $15,000 for the first 2 years, and for whatever reason, either forgot or just decided to stop it. Maybe they retired early and then went back and found a good job and realized, hey, I don't want to take out another 3 years of 15 grand and pay higher taxes because I'm in a new tax bracket with my new job. I'm just going to stop it and eat the cost, unfortunately, on that penalty. So what happens is the IRS comes in and looks at, okay, you've taken out $15,000 twice, that's $30,000. We've waived that 10% penalty, so now you owe us that 10%, or you owe us $3,000 to stop this. Otherwise, they'd have to keep doing it for another 5 years, or another 3 years, or until 59 and a half, whichever's longer in this case. So that's one reason we see people stop them. Either they forget, or they have an educated decision as to whether it makes sense to stop it versus continue that. What we also see is people set up a 72T, and we talked to them about being cautious. You don't want to wrap your entire account in there, because once you do, it's pretty much restrained, because you can make a mistake. So we do recommend splitting it in this example. But maybe somebody needs to take out more money after they start at 72T. So in the same situation, they start with $400,000, split that up, 250 and 150. We're getting that $15,000 a year for the next 5 years, or 59 and a half, whichever's longer. In this case, let's assume they took that out after 3 years. They realized, hey, this isn't covering what I need. Maybe they had some issue where their car broke down, and they said, look, I really need to get a car. There's no way around it, and that's going to cost, let's say, $500 a month. So they say, okay, I need to take out an extra $6,000. The $15,000 not covering me. I need $21,000. So they could take out that extra $6,000, if they wanted to, or $500 a month, and just pay the 10% penalty on it. But they don't want to do that. If they know it's something that's recurring, for instance, this car example I gave you, then they can do a second 72T. So they take that 150, separate that out between 100,000 and 50,000. So now they still have a little bit reserves there, but they're having two 72Ts. The difference is that that new one has its new starting point. So if the first one was going for 3 years and this one starts, let's say, at 58, then they have to do it for 5 more years on that one. The first one can stop after that 2 more years, but this one has to stay in there for 5 years. So that's an example we've seen from time to time. That's one of the reasons why we split those accounts, so you're not locked into one specific plan. And on the opposite side, let's assume that it was more of a one-time situation. So same situation. This person split it between 250 and 150. They're taking out that $15,000 a year. 3 years goes by and everything's going great. And then let's assume something, maybe there's a storm, there's hail damage, maybe they need a new roof or something. It's kind of like one-time expense, a car wreck, who knows, whatever it may be, medical expenses. But there's something they need to take out money. They need $10,000. And it's just a one-time situation. So instead of setting up another 72T, locking them into that, they just say, look, I'm going to take the $10,000. I'm not 59 and a half. I understand it. And I'll just pay the 10% penalty, so it's going to cost me $1,000 on there. We see that from time to time as well. But again, ultimately, by splitting those accounts, it gives you the flexibility to make those decisions. And the last one, let's talk about the rule of 55. So we've got this example, assuming that somebody has $400,000, and what we suggested them to do, instead of actually taking a 72T, which maybe most advisors would do, but as fiduciaries, like I said before, we're going to recommend the most favorable options for you tax-wise and investment-wise. And we're going to recommend that you, even if you want to, we're going to say keep money in your 401k plan if you retire, let's say at 55, 56, even 54. If you retire the year you turn 55 or later, it counts. So you could actually retire at 54 as long as you're going to turn 55 later that year. But we're going to tell you to at least keep something in that 401k. We do this all the time with individuals retiring between 55 and 59 and a half. And a lot of times they question us why we do it, and lo and behold, 2 or 3 years down the road, it comes to a situation where they need to tap into it, and it made sense. So in this case, let's assume this person takes that $400,000 with our recommendation. Maybe they leave $100,000 behind in the company plan, so they don't have to do a full 72T, and they can just take out withdrawals as they need it from the company plan. So in this case, they may have taken out $21,000 the first year, $16,000 the next year, maybe a little bit more, $23,000 the third year. But unfortunately, they run into that a problem where maybe that plan only gives you 1 withdrawal per year, maybe 2 withdrawals per year, and they can't take another one. So they have to go into their IRA, and that IRA now is $300,000, give or take fluctuations, obviously, and they need some extra money. So in this case, maybe they split that account and set up a 72T on a portion of that, so they get that extra $6,000 or $500 a month that they want in that same situation I mentioned before, maybe the car purchase or something like that. So as you can see, there's a lot of different breakdowns you can look at with these 72T calculations. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It does depend upon your age, longevity, the amount of assets you have in your IRA. And again, you can split those IRAs up, so you can have 1, 2, 3, 10, 100 if you really want to. But you can actually break those IRAs up and do 72T calculations on each individual IRA. But again, whenever you start that, it has to be there for the next 5 years or 59.5, whichever's longer. So I mentioned before, the cash flow analysis really is the best way for us to help you determine if you're on the right path when to retire, help you review your company plans, but also if you're thinking about retiring and taking withdrawals prior to 59.5, that will also go through that tool and show you. We can model different 72T calculations and things of that nature. But right now, about 3/4 of Americans over 50 don't even have a written plan. So if you can spend about maybe 10 minutes with us, 15, depending upon how complex it may be, we'll gather some data, some information from you. We'll put that plan together, give us about a week or so. We'll set some time to review that and go over all your options. And again, let you know, are you on the right path to retire? Can you retire sooner? Should you work later? We're not going to shy away from telling you, hey, you can't retire. You need to work longer if you want to support your retirement plans. We'll go through all that and how do you actually process that rollover? How do you set up 72T if you need to do that? Or would it be better to leave money in the company plan for age 55 withdrawals? So if I want to kind of wrap this up, I'm going to get into some questions that looks like we had come through. We had quite a few come through, so we'll get into those. But again, as I said before, any questions, reach us at 800-900-5867. You can also email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. And while I go through these questions, we got a couple QR codes we'll keep up here. One is you can just scan it with your camera on your cell phone. One's to schedule an appointment with myself or one of the other advisors we have across the nation for the retirement group. Or there's also one for our LinkedIn page if you'd like to follow along on our LinkedIn page, be updated on future webinars. We've also got company-specific LinkedIn pages, so if you want to be updated on interest rate updates and changes to company pension plans, changes to 401ks, things of that nature, we can keep you up to date on there as well. So let me turn my attention over to some of these questions that came through and see if I can't get these taken care of for you guys. So we got one, does the 72T apply to all my IRAs? And is a calculation based on each individual IRA? So this piggybacks really what I just kind of wrapped it up on talking about was, again, the 72T calculation is per IRA. So if you have one IRA and you decide to do it on that IRA, then the entire calculation is based upon that. So if we go back to that example with Cynthia, if she did a 72T on her entire $800,000, that's what gets that calculation method. The problem with that is that if she needs to deviate or do anything, it's susceptible to blowing that up and having to come back and have that retroactive penalty. So usually what we're going to do, like I said before, is if you want to take a 72T, at a minimum, shave off at least an emergency amount, so that way you're not locking your entire account into a 72T calculation. So to answer the question, it can be a single account or it can be multiple. Generally speaking, it's best to split your accounts at least 2 ways. In some cases that we saw in those examples, they can be split 2 or 3 or 4 ways if you add on new 72Ts in the future's time. Okay, what happens if I need to take a distribution more than the SEP or RMD? Okay, so the RMD is a little bit different. That's required minimum distribution, but they do use the same calculation tables to calculate this. But So when I gave those examples before, there's different ways you can address this if you need to take out more. Again, you can actually just take out a just take out a distribution and pay the penalty if it's a one-time situation. If it's something you see needing more money in perpetuity or for the next 5 years or so, you can do a second 72T. Or again, if you had that 401k still alive, there could be options to tap into it that way as well. So if you have questions on there, we can kind of go through that, but there is flexibility. And again, that's why we talk about splitting the account, so you have that flexibility should something come up. How does the 72T compare to the Rule of 55? So I talked kind of quite a bit about the Rule of 55. That is specific to company plans, so 401ks. And it's different than the 72T because there's nothing you're locked into. So if you retire the year you turn 55 or later from a company plan, you have the option to take a withdrawal from there without the 10% penalty. Now, it is dependent upon the company withdrawal rules. Some companies don't let you take a withdrawal until 59 and a half, or if you've retired, let's say at 57, the only withdrawal they let you do is one withdrawal, and that's a full distribution. So obviously you may not want to do that, or they may only allow you to do one withdrawal per year, or two withdrawals per year. Some give you one per month. So it depends upon your plan. And give us a call. We can run through what those different plan options are with you. But the worst case scenario would be a company that doesn't give you a withdrawal except for that full distribution. In that case, then you might be able to do an like a split. Let's say you wanted to take out, let's say you had $500,000 in there, and you wanted to take out 50,000. You could do a plan closure or rollover, and essentially take $50,000 out to yourself without that 10% penalty because it's coming from the company plan, and the remaining 450 can be rolled over to an IRA. But now going forward, any withdrawals you take before 59.5 could be penalized unless you set up that 72T on there. So again, the age 55 gives you more flexibility. It's not something you're tied to, but you are tied to the company rules and regulations as well. Will the 72T distributions impact my Social Security benefits? No, it will not impact your Social Security benefits. Again, unless somewhere down the road they have a means testing ability or something like that based upon other income you have coming in. It's not going to count as earned income if you're taking your Social Security prior to full retirement age, so you're not going to have a reduction in benefits there on that. So again, it's just like if you were taking a withdrawal from a 401k or an IRA, it's not going to have an effect on the Social Security benefits. Now, if you get into the how much you're taking and things of that nature, it could affect calculations as far as your Medicare premiums and things like that. But that's a deeper conversation to have. Which 72T distribution method is best? Okay, so there's really not a one-size-fits-all solution. Again, we talked about this before with the 4 different examples we gave. It's really going to depend upon your situation. I would argue the best option would be if you have that ability to have an age 55 rule, because that's the most flexible, and that's what we're going to push for you first, even though that means we're not going to be able to manage the account for you. That's not what we're here for. We're here to make sure you have the best strategy set forth. So again, let me make this clear. If you are under 59.5 or between 55 and 59.5 and you're leaving your job and you're talking to an advisor that tells you to roll everything over to an IRA so he or she can manage it, be very cautious about that and give us a call. Like I said before, we're in the business of managing money, but at the end of the day, we're here to do what's right for you. So we're going to tell you to at least keep a chunk in that 401k for the age 55 rule. So I would say that's the best method first, and then if you get into the 72T having to do that, obviously we're looking at what you need at a minimum for essential expenses and setting that up. And then it may not be what you want, but at the end of the day, it may mean doing a second one later on. But what we'd like to do is make sure you set up at a minimum what you need, so you're not taking out too much and having to pay more in taxes, or subjecting yourself to a potential mistake on your part and not taking it and having to retroactively pay that penalty. But again, the answer is run that cash flow analysis with us, look at your individual situation, and we'll tailor the best 72T process for you if you even need that. What's the federal minimum rate mentioned in the webinar, and did calculations change recently? Okay, so I did kind of touch on this. So again, what happens is there's a minimum interest rate that the IRS uses in that calculation method, and they update that every year. The good news was it had been low for the last couple years because interest rates were low. So, and when I go back to that example with Cynthia we gave, when we first ran this years ago, that 800,000 got her a little bit over 42,000. If we ran this maybe 2 years ago, it might have been closer to 35 or 34,000 because those interest rates were lower. But like I said, they did just come out and give a blanket change in 2022 and bump it to 5%. So it's very simple and easy to calculate. You still have the there's alternative rates to use, but if you want to maximize it, that 5% rate's the best right now. So in her case, I think she could have gotten closer to about $50,000 based upon age 52. So there's a whole calculation method we can run through it with you. But going back to her example, um, hopefully if she needed that 42,000 or something, or 40,000, then we would have said, okay, let's figure out how much we have to use. So maybe it was 650,000 or 675 or 700,000. Do a 72T on that portion, leave the other 100, 150,000, whatever it may be, in an IRA to grow. And if she needs to tap into it for emergency or something like that, she can do that on top of the 72T. So she's not locked in her full account. Last one, we'll get this wrapped up for everybody. So how's a partial year handled when I turn 59 and a half? Do I take half the amount for the partial year? Okay, this is actually a really good question, because that is something that people have questions about, as far as how does this actually work? Is it calendar year based, or is it prorated? And the calculation is based upon calendar year, but as far as taking it out, it's on a prorated basis. So let's say let's say that you decide to start a 72T in October. That doesn't mean you have to take out that full year's worth for those last 3 months. You can take it out for those 3 months. So let's say you start October of 2020, and let's say you're over 55. So then you go forward 5 years to October 2025 when you can end that. Or if it's longer, you hit 59 and a half. That's when you can end that as well. So I think that may be what the question was, the partial. So on the front side, it can be partial if you're starting it in mid-year. And on the back side, if you turn 59 and a half, or that 5 years ends mid-year, let's say it ends in May, then again, you'll have to take it through that partial period as well. So again, a lot of great questions here, but at the end of the day, if you have any other questions, just reach out to us at 1-800-900-5867. We'll be happy to answer those. And again, like I said, tie them directly to your specific company plans and wrap them into a cash flow analysis to show you what your overall long-term situation looks like and help you with those decisions. But I want to remind everybody again, even though we've been working with a lot of your companies for the past 30 years, again, that does not mean we are employed by them nor endorsed by them, but we do have extensive knowledge about those. So should you have any other questions, want to run that cash flow analysis, have questions about when to take your pension, do you want to analyze your 401k, question on healthcare, all that we can help you out with. So again, 1-800-900-5867. And I thank everybody for joining us. We hope you have a great day.